Let's take a look at the top 5 strongest gameplay-wise characters appearing to an EN banner near you in the next 6 months. Obligatory, this is purely my opinion and you should weigh your own roster plus your investments and savings if you wish to pool for these units. Starting off at the number 5 position, we have Joint Operations 6, featuring Skadi, Couchstead, Exusiai, and Mountain. Being a joint operations banner, it has no off rate ups, meaning you can only get the 6 stars on the banner itself. It also runs concurrently with CC9 Deepness, which is the Undertides themed CC appearing after CC8 Dawnseeker. Mountain and Couchstead are phenomenal lane holders and probably some of the strongest units for anyone actually starting out the game, staying very consistent throughout the late game as well. Exusiai is one of the strongest operators early game as well and still maintains a very strong relevance in the late game due to her having the strongest damage ceiling in the game with enough setup. Skadi is in a strange position given 2 things. One, she's relatively weak on release and even in EN currently with her first module, she isn't that desirable for most players. In addition, doctors who've been playing since the Undertides event might have an operator called Skadi Outer and you cannot use Skadi Outer with Skadi in the same squad. However, things begin to change when Skadi Outer gets her second module, which is the one that reduces her redeployment time drastically. At potential 1, she has a 40-second redeployment time, and at potential 6, she has a 36-second redeployment time. To put into perspective, that is only twice the redeployment time of Phantom for an operator that deals significantly more damage, and is also somewhat tanky on her own with the Dreadnought's base stats. In comparison to Neo the Radiant Knight, her next competitor, she has less than half of Neo's redeployment time, assuming you're not playing Casimir's units. Overall, this banner is only so low on the list because I believe a lot of my viewers would already have the operators Mountain, Couchstead, and Exusiai, which are the main pickups of this banner. If you're a newer player missing all 3 of these options, the banner's value rises drastically, especially given the peace of mind of always pulling a rate up on every 6 star. If you're missing only 2 out of the 3 options and a lot of other 6 stars that aren't on the banner, it's worth noting that every non-desirable operator you get will be a duplicate, and other banners who will allow you to pull off rate ups might be a better consideration. For the older players who already have these operators, this banner is fairly worthless. However, if you were a newer player or just really unlucky, then this banner solidly jumps up to an 8 out of 10. Next up on our list, coming in at number 4, we have the limited banner Abyss Corrosion, which runs with the Stoutefiera Navis event. It features the operators Irene and Specter Outer, each at a 35% chance, and because it is a limited banner, you also get 24 free pools, which is very significant given then you only need to invest 26 of your own pools to hit the soft pity. A lot of the banner's value actually rides on this, however, because Irene and Specter Outer, although both decent units, aren't as phenomenal or game breaking as the other ones high up on this list, or even as Couchstead or Mountain in the previous one. Without going into too much unnecessary detail, Irene is essentially what happens when you slightly rework base Chen and then reintroduce her into the game. In exchange for missing the SP talent, she then has a lower SP cost on skill 3, which is functionally the same as regular Chen's skill 3 except that it is AoE and it also knocks up the enemies for a short duration following the skill activation. She also comes with a nifty talent to ignore 50% of the enemy's defense at a 50% chance, which is increased to a 100% chance when attacking airborne enemies, a potent debuff which all of her skills inflict. For Specter Outer, she's a doorkeeper specialist that is pretty meh on release but gets significantly better and more usable with her tier 3 module. Given her archetype, when she is killed in her base form, she transforms into a doll that deals arts damage in a radius and has 0 block. After a certain duration, the doll then transforms back into regular Specter Outer, so as long as the doll isn't killed, Specter Outer will never die. Her main selling point is her skill 2, which is a single target version of regular Specter's skill 2. What's unique about Specter Outer's skill 2 is that after the skill duration, she instantly transforms into the doll, and if you have the module, after the doll transforms back into Specter Outer after a set duration, skill 2 is already partially charged. I'll rate this banner a 6.5 or 7 out of 10 if I was being generous, however I've rated it above the joint operation banner because the operators are new and also you get a significantly easier time hitting the pity, which is very appealing for a lot of players. Next up on our list we have the Spark Blossom event banner, which runs with a Light Spark in Darkness, the next event for EN after Invitation to Wine. I've made a Goldenglow guide that goes significantly more in depth than I'll do in this video and I highly recommend checking it out. A friend of mine, Iron Cobra, who does E0 only clears, has also made his version of the Goldenglow guide, which I highly recommend checking out as well. The very quick version is that she has a Surtur-esque talent of Resignor, although it's weaker by 5, and as a drone caster she has low base attack, so she has good synergy with say Scouter, and her damage ramps up when attacking the same target over and over. Her main selling point is her skill 3, which expands her range to a global scope and gives her 2 extra drones, which allows her to deal significant amounts of damage to enemies in hard to reach areas. This banner is a solid 7.5 out of 10 in my books, and I highly recommend pulling for Goldenglow if you're lacking in arts options. Following our favorite pink Kato, we have the celebratory banner for the launch of Chapter 10 Shatterpoint featuring Horn. Don't let her defender status confuse you because she is one of the strongest DPS units we have in EN currently. As a fortress defender, she has a very unique range wherein she cannot attack the enemies in the 2 rows in front of her, but can launch ranged attacks in the enemies 3 to 5 rows in front of her. I'll likely have an in-depth review of Horn soon, which will be linked in the top right corner once it's uploaded. A brief summary is that she has 2 very potent talents along with 2 pretty strong skills. Her first talent gives every defender a flat 23% attack buff, which is pretty nuts, and her second talent is essentially Skadi's module, which gives her a revive when dead and also grants her additional attack speed and defense. Skill 1 is very much like Fiammetta's skill 2, and although the reveal invisibility portion isn't that useful, the raw damage more than makes up for it. Her main skill, however, is skill 3, which deals an absurd amount of damage, matching up to Chowta's skill 3, making up for Chowta's main weakness by having a relatively short range and allows her to snipe enemies from afar. The one downside of the skill is that it's slightly backloaded, with the first 12 seconds only having a 70% attack increase and the last 12 seconds having 140%. Excluding Link because she's sort of an outlier, Horn is the next strongest unit introduced since Chowta, which is saying something. Overall, I'll rate the banner at around 8.5 to 9 out of 10, and I recommend anyone who likes Horn or has interest in powerful gameplay units to pull for her, and she'll change the way you approach regular stages to a decent extent. Coming in at number 1, we have kthx and Penib, the limited banner for the Ideal City summer event featuring Gavial, Outer, and Pozyomka. Again, as a limited event, it features 24 free pulls, so you only need 26 for pity. That's less relevant in this banner than Specter Outer though, because in all likelihood you're going to be dumping a lot of pulls into this banner, given how strong both of these operators on rate up are. Although I've made a quick initial impressions video on Gavial and Pozyomka in the past, I do not believe I accurately represented them, so I'll try to do a better job here. Gavial is a Centurion guard of the same archetype as Blaze, with her main skill being skill 3. Her talents are nothing special, but it does boost her healing by a significant amount, especially if she's on lower health. At skill 3 M3, it grants her +2 block, adding up to 5 total, and also grants her a 50% damage reduction, wherein the damage reduced by said reduction will be taken as a bleed effect over the next 20 seconds when the skill ends. She also gains a very sizable attack speed and attack up buff, allowing her to reach an absurd 3.5k single target DPS on 0 defense on skill 3, not to mention the fact that she can hit 5 targets. The skill also has a 10-second heli drop, and her innate tankiness makes it so that there's a good chance you can drop it on a tanky enemy and expect to pull the skill off before she dies. She works the best paired with a healer, and in certain situations such as H7-1, just an answer is enough to keep her alive and solo the stage. The range on skill 3 is fairly restrictive, however it's still a great skill for clearing out waves and weaker bosses, and Gavial at minimum is an above average 6-star. And she's not even the main attraction of the banner because Pozyomka is an order of magnitude more broken than her. Pozyomka is in the same archetype as Schwartz, i.e. a heavy shooter, and her 2 talents allow her to deploy a crossbow very similar to that of Weedy's cannon. At max investment, the crossbow has similar attack to Pozyomka herself. The crossbow also inflicts a defense debuff when attacking, which is further increased if it's in the 4 tiles surrounding Pozyomka. All 3 of her skills are inherited by the crossbow when they're activated, but I'll mainly be looking at skill 3 because it is by far her strongest skill. Although skill 3 has a conditional which indicates that she gets more damage if she's hitting the enemies in the tiles directly in front of her, I don't think that's big of a deal because Schwartz is still incredibly powerful, and well, instead of dealing less damage to the enemies not in the tiles in front of her, Schwartz just deals 0 damage. At 0 defense with the conditional active and with the crossbow and Pozyomka hitting the same target, she reaches 5000 durational skill DPS. This makes her by far the strongest standalone DPS unit in the entire game in terms of single target, and even Exusiai loses to her after just 30 to 40 defense. She scales pretty decently with defense as well, still dealing 3.6k DPS at 1000 defense, which is around the point where a lot of people might start bringing out arts damage. Even considering maps that you can't really use her optimally, her crossbow is a heli drop fast redeploy Schwartz that's also invulnerable, which by itself gives significant enough utility for her to be brought to most stages. Eventually, Schwartz's higher base damage per hit allows her to overtake Pozyomka in terms of DPS, but that only really happens after like 2.5k defense, in which no enemy in the game right now has that absurd amount. If I had to give one downside to Pozyomka's skill 3 is that she really can't be used with Schwartz, given that she wants the same tiles as Schwartz and she needs 2 of the same tiles, one for herself and one for the crossbow in order to reach her full potential. The 5-star Agent Vanguard on this banner has yet to have her potential revealed, But even ignoring that, with the free pools and also the hit hunting parametric models that we get for free for pooling on this banner, it's probably the second strongest one we've seen yet since Chen Auto. Easily a 9.5 out of 10 in my books, and I highly recommend pooling for this banner if you like either of these characters, whether it be their lore, gameplay, or even character design. That's about all I have for today though, and as always, may you get less off banners than I do.